name is Jozef Colpaert from University of Antwerp. I have 40 years of experience. You can see that, you can hear that in my voice. Tired as a language teacher, developer, researcher, scholar, everything you want. I'm going to shock you a little bit. My conclusion after all these years is that there's not enough evidence to suggest that technology has a direct effect on learning. No. Not even virtual worlds, not even games. But listen what I said. A direct, I mean inherent effect. That means, oh, I use a game, so learning will be better. The students will have better results. My statement is, my hypothesis is what I want to prove before I retire, is that the added value of technology depends on the designedness of your learning environment on the one hand, and what I will talk about on task design on the other. What do I mean by designedness? Designedness is the extent to which your learning environment as teachers, this is what you do, all your activities, all your content, all your technology, your pedagogical model, you put it to place, the extent to which you design this in a methodological way. And I see this as a puzzle. And if there's one piece missing in that puzzle, and then you see a virtual environment, a virtual world, a game or gamification object, and that will fill perfectly that hole, that's exactly the added value. And I see, on the one hand, I'm very critical about what some people say in a hype-like way. I'm very critical, but on the other hand, I see more possibilities than those people, than the guy in the video. I see more possibilities in these virtual environments, and this is the great work Nick has been doing for us, is putting at our disposal this virtual world and all these objects. What are the new possibilities for language learning and teaching? That's what we call affordances. Go to virtual worlds, go to telecollaboration, go to these things. If you clearly see which activities, which competences, which skills can be done, trained, acquired by these activities and not by any other activities. That's what I have learned in these 40 years. Your learning environment is what you create for your students, and wait until you clearly see, and that's the role of our project, we want to show you these possibilities, and wait until you clearly see them, and then all the rest, the technological side, will become very easy, especially with the support of Nick. Coming back to task design, my starting point, also a starting point, I'm a little bit obsessed. That irritates the other team members, sorry for that. But I'm stubborn and convinced. Yes, please take my picture so that my wife believes I'm actually here. No, TPLT is an amazing movement or how would I call it? No, it's not really theory, it's a real movement with an organization, conferences. And I will not go back to the theory behind it. But what I see in theory and practice very quickly, I'm a little bit disappointed with the examples of the tasks I see and hear. I try to find good examples. And the question I ask myself in this project, and I see my role in this project this way, how can we try to make more motivating tasks? When I see a task, I think, if I go back to my experience as a language teacher during 6 years in secondary education, I can imagine my students would be like this. Oh no. I exaggerate a little bit here, but it's just like, I want more from technology. I just don't want just fun. I want the clear proof that it works. And it works if you apply it and use it at the correct moment and in the correct circumstances. As language teachers, where do your task ideas come from? Do you think 3 seconds and say, oh, yeah, I have an idea, very quickly. Or do you take a good practice, a good example from another context? Is that transportable to another context? Are you sure? Do you start from your curriculum and say, okay, I need to do this, so I will take that task? Do you start from your practical requirements? Do you start from your personal interest or the personal interest of the learner? We could spend half an hour on that. My point is that we should spend as language teachers much more time on task design, meaning thinking about finding a good task idea and test it out. It will not immediately be perfect. And after a long time writing very sophisticated texts, 50 pages of heavy theory, I try to, and it's still a step, it's not perfect yet, but I try to simplify that in order to show teachers what their reasoning process could be, in order to open up all the wider range of possibilities and inspire them and say, hey, there are many ideas. And I've defined these 5 balloons: contextual fit, curriculum fit, autonomy fit, psychological fit, and activity fit. Curriculum fit is simply, if you have an idea, then the curriculum fit is the extent to which your task fits what you're doing, and the rest of what you're doing. It's very important that if you have an activity in telecollaboration, that it's not suddenly something completely different. It should have its logical place, obvious place, in the lesson plan. Contextual fit is simply the extent to which the task fits the affordances and limitations of the context in terms of technological, cultural, and practical requirements. More importantly, I'm working on this. I try to say, hey, listen, it's not just about talking. There are many more possibilities. And I have defined several levels of complexity. I wouldn't say the lowest level, because you start there, is just have them talk, present themselves, introduce themselves, or talk about their country. That's the easiest point to start. But another level, which adds something else, another effect, is interact. Try to convince, try to sell, try to do something to reach an effect with what you're talking about. Another level is doing something. There's already another activity next to talking. That can be flying together in a flight simulator. Ever done that? That's fun for me. Doing exercises, playing whatever game, you've seen the example. Simulate something. And then you see, while they're doing something, their attention goes to that activity, and they're not really focused on their linguistic interaction. And the most complex level, where I believe in, is to make something together. I would say a non-physical artifact, but suddenly they are 3D printers, so they actually can build physical artifacts together. I've made a long list, I will put that online, of possible artifacts. And if you start thinking about it, the list is almost endless. It's all about your creativity. It's not about technology. I insist on that. Technology can only be useful if you're creative enough and designer. You consider yourself as creative designers. Psychological fit, very important. Try to define and say, hey, ask yourself, language teachers, which task can I design, think about, where the result of the task is reusable, is useful for others. Others can use the result. If I make a knowledge clip, I put it online, and learners worldwide can use my knowledge clip where I explain, just as Nick has done, could make a knowledge clip, how to make things in our virtual world. So others can use it worldwide. Meaningfulness, I define that as, what is the result? What does the result of the task mean for myself? The fun, the reuse of the task result for other purposes. It can also be the effect or the result of the task can also become part of the learning environment, where students contribute to the content of your lessons. Collaborative work, co-construction of knowledge, if you go to literature. And on the deepest level, personal goals, but that's my personal psychological research interest, where we go to deeper personal goals, volitions, like I want respect, reward, autonomy or not, collaborate or not, I want to feel competent. And last but not least, autonomy fit, meaning when you design a task, you can ask yourself, certainly in the beginning, I will give them a task which they need to execute as such. Gradually progressing, you can say, I will leave them some degrees of freedom, I will leave them some choices. I say, do that task, but you have the choice between A, B, and C, and then they can first discuss, to make a discussion about those possibilities. A third level is that you give them a task, and you give them half an hour to redesign the task and say, okay, now we have this given task, and we can simply say, well, we would like to do it in another way, and they can completely redesign it. Or you just say, design your own task as a task. So it's a juggling act. Task design is a juggling act. I have not found a systematic approach. Do these steps. I've been told to stop. Do these steps and you will get the result. This is my hypothesis that the more complex level, I had defined on 3 axes, levels of complexity. You start with the easiest level. As long as you go to the more complex level, the linguistic production will be of a higher level. Can go back to Krashen with that theory. So the higher complexity, the more result you will have on the linguistic level. And secondary hypothesis is that it's not really what the discussion you wanted them to have that's interesting. That's just put a focus on the product, on something else, and while they're preparing, while they're negotiating, while they're talking on how to do that, that interaction is far interesting to me. And this is what I'm going to research in this project and hopefully inspire many other people. Thank you.